Hey everyone, I'm Brave Nature Warriors. Before we dive into the story, I want to know, where are you watching from and what time is it for you? It's always fascinating to see listeners tuning in from different places. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy story number 1. I turned the key in the bakery door that morning and felt the indentation of my old wedding band in my pocket, the one I stopped wearing after the divorce. Last spring, I keep it on me for some reason. Habit maybe, or superstition. The gold is worn thin from years of kneading dough and washing dishes, but still carries the faint scent of vanilla and yeast, a trace of who I used to be. The quiet inside the shop was comforting. The hum of the refrigerators, the warm air thick with sugar and butter. I'd moved to Silverton, to start fresh, to be the woman who smiles behind a glass case of pastries and tells people she's doing just fine. Outside, the fog hung low, turning maple, laying into a watercolor of orange leaves and gray air. Across the street stood the Miller property, empty since they'd moved 2 years ago. The field now a patch of wet matted grass, and the scarecrow tall, slouched, and somehow always facing the wrong way. I first noticed it on a Tuesday morning when I opened the shop. The scarecrow's burlap head was turned toward me, the black button eyes reflecting faint light from the street lamp. I thought maybe a teenager had turned it as a prank. Silverton's full of that kind of harmless mischief around Halloween. I laughed about it to my employee, Lacey, while we filled the display case with cinnamon rolls. She glanced outside and said it was creepy, but I shrugged it off. That afternoon, when I stepped out to dump the trash, the head was turned back toward the road again. I remember thinking it was just my imagination, angles, and light. Still, I locked the bakery door early that night, which wasn't something I'd done in months. By Thursday, the scarecrow had changed again. This time, its arm was raised, slightly bent toward my side of the street. The flannel shirt it wore had dark stains along the sleeves, and one glove was missing. I took a picture on my phone to prove to myself it was real, but when I looked at the photo later, the scarecrow's head was facing the road, not me. I deleted it, uneasy. That evening, I called my neighbor, an older man named Carl, who ran a repair shop a block over. He laughed when I told him, said kids were getting bolder every year, probably moving it at night. You're just noticing more now that you're on your own, he said. And I didn't argue. He wasn't wrong. Ever. Since Daniel left, silence fell heavier, especially at night when every creak of the old house reminded me I was the only heartbeat inside. Friday morning brought the first real scare. When I unlocked the front door of the bakery, the smell of damp straw hit me thick and sour, like old hay after rain. I checked the floors, thinking maybe something had spilled, but the scent clung stubbornly, especially near the front window. The scarecrow was still across the street this time, with its head tilted just slightly to one side. That night, I dreamed of rustling sounds in my kitchen and woke up with the smell still in my nose. I told Lacey about it the next day, and she joked that maybe the scarecrow had a crush on me. She stopped laughing when she realized I wasn't joking about the smell. The following night, I decided to stay late at the bakery to decorate pumpkin pies. Around 10:30, I turned off the lights and walked to my car. The street was silent except for dripping gutters and the faint whisper of fog. The scarecrow stood where it always did, but now its entire body was turned toward my side of the street. The lamplight showed a smear of dark mud on its jeans, as though someone had dragged it. My throat tightened. I hurried into my car, locking the doors before I even turned the key. I could have sworn as I drove away that one of the buttons caught the light again, like an eye following me. 2 days later, I called the police. I felt foolish doing it, but when I explained that someone might be moving the scarecrow to watch me, the officer sounded sympathetic. Officer Daniels came by in the afternoon, took a look, and assured me there wasn't much they could do unless I caught someone in the act. He walked the field, noted the footprints in the mud, and said they looked old, probably raccoons. He said I wanted to believe him, But raccoons don't drag scarecrows around. When I went home that night, the smell of straw greeted me again, this time inside my living room. I tore through the house, checking every window, every lock. Everything was sealed. Still, the scent lingered, heavy and damp, like someone had just shaken out a bundle of wet hay. The first real confrontation came on October 27th. I was sitting on the couch watching the rain smeared down the windows when I saw movement outside. A figure stood under the streetlight, motionless. It took me a few seconds to realize it was a scarecrow no longer in the miller's field, but on my side of the street at the edge of my yard. My heart dropped into my stomach. I froze watching. The head was angled directly at my window. I grabbed my phone to call the police. But when I looked back up, it was gone. Just gone. I didn't sleep that night. The second escalation happened the following evening. Lacey came by after closing to help me clean up. We were laughing about something trivial when she suddenly went pale, staring past me toward the window. "It's right there," she whispered. I turned, and sure enough, the scarecrow stood in the alley behind the bakery, pressed against the glass. Its head was tilted to one side, and the missing glove revealed a pale hand underneath that didn't look like straw. Lacey screamed, and I ran to the back door. But by the time we opened it, the alley was empty. She swore she saw a person inside it. But the next morning when I brought it up, she looked embarrassed and said she must have imagined it, like the memory had been scrubbed clean. Overnight, the third and worst time came the night before Halloween. I was at home, sitting in bed with the TV on low, trying to distract myself. Around midnight, I heard the faint scrape of something against the window. It was rhythmic, deliberate, like someone tapping gently. I turned off the TV. The tapping stopped. I approached the window, but before I could part the curtains, a dull thud hit the glass. I yanked them open, and there it was. The scarecrow's head was inches from mine, pressed against the pane, straw spilling from the seams of its neck. But behind the burlap, under the slit mouth, I saw skin, human skin, wet and pale. I stumbled backward, screaming, knocking over the lamp. By the time the police arrived, the scarecrow was back across the street, standing perfectly still in the miller's field again. They didn't believe me. Officer Daniels tried to be kind, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He said he'd patrol the area, but it was Halloween weekend. Too many kids, too many pranks. When they left, I sat on the couch until dawn, shaking. The house felt invaded, the air thick with that smell of straw. I finally noticed a faint scrape on my arm, a shallow line of red that hadn't been there before. It burned faintly, and no matter how many times I washed it, the scent clung to my skin. Halloween morning, I packed a bag and left, drove straight to Salem to stay with my sister. When I came back, 2 days later, the scarecrow was gone. Just an empty patch of mud in the field, and a few scattered straws stuck to my porch rail. I moved to Portland a month later, sold the bakery to Lacey, and tried not to think about any of it. But every October, I still dream. In the dream, I'm back in that house on Maple Lane, and the fog is thick again. I hear the faint rustle of straw and a tap at the window, soft, almost polite. I never look. I just lie there, heart pounding, waiting for morning. Sometimes when I wake up, I can still smell it on my pillow, the damp sweetness of wet hay, and something faintly human underneath. The scar on my arm is pale now, but when it rains, it darkens like fresh bruising. I keep the photo Lacey took that night, the one from the alley, locked in a drawer. The image is grainy, and the window glass reflects the street light. But if you look closely just past the glare, you can see a shape that isn't supposed to be there, a face behind the burlap. I don't tell people about Silverton anymore. I just say I left because the town felt too small, too quiet. But every Halloween, I double-check my windows before bed. If you ever see a scarecrow where it shouldn't be, especially one that seems to notice you, don't ignore it. And if you smell damp, straw inside your house, leave. Don't stop to look. Just leave. Before we jump into the next story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. We really need your love and support. It means a world to us, and you're the reason this channel keeps going. Story number 2. I still keep the brass. Lighter my wife gave me the night before she died. It's scratched now, dulled at the corners from years of use. But when I flick it open, it still makes that clean metallic click that reminds me of her laugh. She used to tease me about how I'd light candles around the house, even in summer, saying I was too sentimental for a firefighter. After the accident, after the flames took her, before I could get home, I stopped lighting them altogether. I told myself I was done with smoke, done with the smell of it. But when Father Grant asked me to help tidy up St. Catherine's before All Saints' Eve, I said yes. Maybe I want to make peace with the thing that took her from me. Maybe I thought faith could clean something the fire had, blackened inside me. The rain was light that evening, tapping against the stained glass windows in soft rhythms. As I swept between the pews, the church was older than most in Jacksonville. The kind with warped wooden floors and a draft that carried incense even long after Mass. My knees creaked as I bent to pick up crumpled bulletins, my flashlight beam tracing across polished wood and brass. The power had gone out twice that week, so Father Grant told me to keep the place locked up after finishing. I'd volunteered to clean the altar last. The marble surface was cold under my hand, smooth and unyielding, like headstones. I remember wiping it down and noticing something faint, the smell of smoke. Tea. At first, I thought it was the incense, that lingering sweetness that always clings to church air. But beneath it was something, harsher, metallic, like burned hair. When I lifted my head, I saw it. A single candle still burning on the altar. It shouldn't have been there. I just snuffed them out minutes earlier. The flame wasn't bright, just a steady blue-tinted flicker, small and wrong. Against the dark, I stepped closer, thinking maybe it had been relit by a draft or that my tired eyes were playing tricks. That's when I saw it. The wax wasn't dripping down. It was climbing, rising slowly toward the flame, as if the candle were melting upward. I remember the way my stomach tightened, that old firefighter instinct whispering that fire doesn't behave like that. I blew it out hard and felt a chill run through me as the smoke twisted into a shape I couldn't describe. Not quite human, but reaching. I stepped back and told myself it was fatigue, that my mind was just tired from years of fighting, things that burned. I locked the doors and drove home through the drizzle, keeping the heater off because the smell of smoke wouldn't leave my clothes. When I got home, I found a faint black smudge on my thumb where I'd touched the candle. I scrubbed it under the sink until my skin went red, but it didn't come off. The next morning, I told Father Grant about it. He smiled like a man indulging a child and said, "That old church has drafts in every corner. Don't read into shadows." I laughed, pretending to agree, though I couldn't shake the memory of that reverse flame. I'd spent 30 years putting out fires, and never once had I seen one fight gravity. That night I dreamed of my wife again, only when she turned toward me. Her hair wasn't its usual brown. It was smoking, coiling upward like candle wicks. I woke to the smell of burnt incense. 2 nights later, I went back to the church with the spare keys. I told myself I wanted to finish polishing the brass fixtures, but really I wanted to see that candle again to prove it had been my imagination. The sanctuary was colder this time, the rain harder against the glass. I flicked on my flashlight and saw my breath fog. In front of me, everything looked as I'd left it, except the altar cloth was slightly askew, and on top of it lay that same candle unlit. But the wax had reformed oddly, pooling upward into a warped shape, like someone had frozen it. Mid-drip, the smell of burning hair was stronger now. When I reached for it, my lighter slipped from my pocket and clinked against the marble. As I picked it up, I noticed something else. The flame-shaped emblem my wife had engraved on the lighter side looked scorched, blackened at the edges. I ran, my thumb over it, and felt heat. Just a faint warmth pulsing like a heartbeat. Then behind me, I heard something, the faintest whisper, a breathy sound that carried my name. I spun around, flashlight trembling, but the pews were empty. My beam caught only dust floating like ash. The next day, I told my friend, Harold, another retired firefighter who volunteered at the parish. He came with me that evening to check the place again. I remember feeling both comforted and stupid, thinking maybe he'd mock me enough to break the tension. But when we reached the altar, the candle was gone. In its place was a thin streak of black, soot running up the wall, like smoke had passed through the plaster. Harold frowned and said, "Probably someone lit incense too close to the wall. You're overthinking it." I could tell he was uneasy, though the way he kept glancing toward the stained glass like it might look back. When I asked him the next day if he remembered the soot mark, he looked confused. "What soot mark?" he said. "We just locked up and left." After that, the whispering began at home. Soft, almost prayerful at first, just under my breath when I tried to fall asleep. Then louder, like voices echoing. In a chapel after Mass. Sometimes I thought I could make out my wife's name. Sometimes I thought I could smell the same burning hair from the church. I tried praying, but every time I said, "Amen," the whisper seemed to repeat a half-second too late. One night, when I couldn't take it anymore, I drove back to St. Catherine's. I told myself it was the last time. The rain was relentless. That evening, flooding the gravel lot, drumming on the roof like fingers, tapping a coffin lid. The church was locked, but the main door creaked open when I touched it. Inside, all the candles along the aisle were lit, every single one, flickering softly, though no one had been there in days. The air was heavy with incense and smoke. I moved toward the altar and saw the same candle, burning at its center again, flame steady, wax rising. My throat tightened. I reached out, whispering my wife's name before I could stop myself, and the flame bent toward me as if it were listening. Then it flared bright, blinding white, and I swear I heard her voice inside it, just a single word. "Stay." I stumbled back, knocking into a pew. My flashlight rolled under the seats, flickering against the floorboards. The flame pulsed like a heartbeat again, faster, brighter, until the wax rose into the air, forming thin threads that stretched toward me. I bolted for the exit, but the heavy doors resisted, holding like something was pressing them shut. When I finally forced them open, rain and cold air rushed in, and the lights behind me snuffed out all at once. I didn't stop running until I was home. The mark on my thumb burned the next morning. It had turned from a smudge to a pale scar, shaped almost like a flame, and the light of the emblem was still blackened. I keep it locked in my desk drawer now, but sometimes when the room is quiet, I can smell incense leaking from it. I tried telling Father Grant once more, but he said the church had been sealed for repairs since October. No candles, no services, nothing. He even laughed softly and said, "You probably dreamed that last part, Robert. Grief can make ghosts out of memory. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And I know that faith doesn't explain a candle that burns backward. It's been years since then, and I haven't stepped into another church since. I still pray sometimes, but never aloud, never near a flame. The scar on my thumb still itches on rainy nights, especially near All Saints' Eve. And when I pass by St. Catherine's, I sometimes see light flickering through the stained glass, just faint enough to doubt. If you ever find yourself alone in an old church at night, and the air smells faintly of incense and burning hair, don't look toward the altar. Don't try to see where the light is coming from. Just leave, because some prayers, once heard, are never answered. They only echo. Story number 3. I still keep my dad's old carving knife wrapped in a dish towel, the handle dark from years of pumpkin pulp and wet hands, the blade a little bent near the tip. He used it every October to carve faces that always looked more goofy than scary. The first Halloween after he died, I sat at the kitchen table staring at that knife for a long time before I finally used it. The smell of raw pumpkin filled the house, the same smell that used to cling to him after we spent hours making jack-o'-lanterns together. He'd light each one and set them along the porch rail, all flickering in uneven rhythm like they were breathing. That year, 2019, it was just me. Mom was working late, as she always did since he passed. I told myself carving pumpkins alone wasn't that different, but it was. The silence in the house was heavier than I'd expected, and every scrape of the knife against the rind sounded too loud. It was drizzling that night, the kind of cold, wet Oregon rain that seems to hang in the air. I had 3 pumpkins lined up on the counter. I carved faces into 2 of them, one smiling, one frowning, and left the third uncut for later. When I looked out the front window, the houses across the street were dark, except for one. The house at the corner of Maple and Pine had only a single pumpkin on its porch. It wasn't lit yet, but I noticed it because of how lonely it looked, one bright orange spot against all that gray rain. I didn't know the family well. I'd heard stories that their kid, a boy a few years younger than me, had died in a fire there when I was in middle school. The house had been repaired, repainted, but people in the neighborhood still crossed the street when they walked past it. After I finished carving, I set a tea light in each pumpkin and turned off the lights. Their faces flickered softly, shadows stretching up the walls. Then, through the rain-blurred window, I saw that the pumpkin across the street had come alive to a dull orange glow that hadn't been there before. I smiled a little, figuring someone else had decided to join in the Halloween spirit. But after a few minutes, I realized something strange. Its flicker matched the rhythm of my own candle. Every time my pumpkin's flame dimmed, the one across the street dimmed too. When mine flared, so did its. I even tested it, leaning closer to blow lightly on my flame. Across the street, the glow wavered perfectly in sync. At first, I laughed. It had to be a coincidence. Or maybe just the way the wind moved. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. The next evening, when I came home from school, the pumpkin across the street was already lit, even though the rest of the house was dark. The drizzle hadn't stopped, and somehow the candle inside burned, clean, untouched by moisture. That night, I left my own pumpkins unlit, just to see what would happen. Sure enough, a few minutes after sunset, the one across the street flickered to life. Anyway, when I told my mom about it over breakfast, she barely looked up from her coffee. "It's Halloween, Noah," she said. "People decorate. Don't overthink it." I didn't push it, though. Her tone stung. She'd been different since Dad died. Tired, quieter, like part of her had drowned with him. That night, I stayed up late playing video games, tried to ignore the way the window seemed to pull at my attention. At midnight, I gave in and looked. The pumpkin was still burning, its flame, faintly blue now, blue like the oxygen flames Dad used in his garage torch when we worked on his car. And when I whispered, "Can you hear me?" the color shifted for just a second to a deep green. I thought about calling a friend, maybe Alex, who lived a few streets over, but it felt ridiculous to explain, so I went outside instead. The rain was lighter now, the street glistening under the amber street lights. The air smelled like wet leaves and pea smoke. When I reached the edge of the neighbor's driveway, the pumpkin's light brightened. Its carved face was simple. 2 eyes, a straight mouth, but the inside glowed unevenly, like something alive was breathing within. I knelt and whispered again, "Who are you?" The flame flickered red. My pulse picked up. I took a shaky breath and said, "Are you the kid who used to live here?" For a moment, the light dimmed almost to nothing, then surged up again, brighter than before. The rain hissed when it hit the top of the pumpkin, but the candle didn't go out. I turned and ran back home. The next morning, there was ash on my porch, a faint dusting that streaked under my shoes. My pumpkins were dark, cold inside, their candles drowned. When I picked one up, a small scorch mark burned my fingertip, though the wax was hardened. At school, I tried telling Alex about it. He laughed and said, "Dude, it's probably just a motion light thing or reflection." But when he walked me home that afternoon, I pointed to the pumpkin across the street. "See, it's lit." Again, he squinted. "What pumpkin?" he said. I stared. It was right there, glowing orange against the gray. "The one on the porch," I said. He frowned. "There's nothing there, man. You sure you're okay?" That was the moment I realized I was alone in this. When night came, I tried not to look, but curiosity kept winning. The flicker matched my heartbeat. Now I could feel it pulse to pulse. A strange sync that made my chest tighten. Around 10 o'clock p.m., the pumpkin on my windowsill relit itself. I hadn't touched it. The candle inside sputtered to life. Pale, blue, then orange again. I whispered, "What do you want?" The air around me chilled instantly. The flame bent sideways, pointing toward the window, toward the house across the street. The first escalation came the next night. I'd left my room light on and tried to study. When I glanced up, my reflection in the window didn't move. It stared back a second longer than I did. Then, the pumpkin across the street flared white, and my heart lurched. I turned away, but the light filled the room, pressing against the glass. When I finally looked back, both flames mine, and the other flickered in perfect time again. The second came 2 days later. Mom noticed the ash and the house streaks on the floor, smudges on the walls near the window. "You've been burning candles again, haven't you?" she said. I told her no, but she didn't believe me. When she went to check, she stared out the window for a while. I asked if she could see the pumpkin. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't see anything, honey." Her voice trembled slightly, though, and that scared me more than if she'd yelled. That night, I heard something knock softly against the glass. Once, twice, like a child tapping from outside. The third came on. Halloween night. I stayed up waiting. The drizzle had turned to a steady rain, the kind that blurs everything into watercolor shapes. Just before midnight, every light in the house went out. The air filled with the smell of smoke, not burning wood, but old dry smoke, like the ghost of fire long gone. I went to the window and saw the pumpkin across, the street blazing bright orange, the rest of the world swallowed by fog. Then another light appeared beside it, smaller, fainter, until 2 pumpkins burned side by side. The second one had the same face as mine. I don't know what made me do it, but I took Dad's knife and went outside. The rain was freezing, running down my neck. As I stepped onto the street, both pumpkins flickered. My chest thudded painfully, and their light pulsed with it. I reached the neighbor's porch, hand trembling, and looked down. The second pumpkin, the one that matched mine, had my name carved into it. My throat went dry. The letters were still wet, as if freshly cut. The knife in my hand felt heavy. I dropped it and stumbled back. Both pumpkins went dark. Instantly, when I got home, there were wet footprints across the floor, smaller than mine, like a kid's. I followed them to the window. On the inside of the glass, someone had drawn a crude smiley, face in soot, 2 circles in line. It stayed there for days, even after I scrubbed it. I still live in that house, though Mom moved out a year later. She said it felt wrong being there, though she never said why. Every Halloween, since the pumpkin across the street relights itself. I don't carve anymore. I threw away Dad's knife after that night, but sometimes I hear it scraping faintly in the drawer I kept it in. The soot mark on the window never faded completely. If you catch the light just right, you can still see the faint outline of a smile. This year, I walked past that corner house again. It's empty. Now, windows boarded up, but the pumpkin's still there, just one glowing. In the rain, And I swear when I passed, the flicker slowed like it was listening to my heart again. I don't go near it anymore. If you ever carve pumpkins, alone and one across the street, starts to flicker with yours. Don't whisper to it. Don't look too long. And whatever you do, don't let it learn your name. Story number 4. I kept a silver lighter in my pocket, even though I quit smoking 2 years ago. It was my sister's. She left it on my dashboard the week before she overdosed, and I could still smell the faint trace of her brand, Camel Blues, when I flicked it open. That metallic click had become my way of staying awake through long shifts, a nervous tick that reminded me of her laugh, sharp and short, like A, hiccup. She used to call me every night before bed, and when those calls stopped, the silence settled into my bones. Working the night desk at the Blue Tide Motel in Florence wasn't glamorous, but it suited me. It was quiet, predictable. People came in from Highway 101, stayed a night, and disappeared by morning. The ocean was a dull roar behind the building, and the wind slipped through cracks of lobby windows like someone whispering too close to my ear. The first time I noticed a shadow in room 6, it was a Tuesday, end of October, off-season. The kind of week where the only guests were truckers and couples trying to escape something. I was refilling the coffee station around midnight when I saw the curtain move in the reflection of the lobby glass. Room 6 was directly across from my window, always dark, always empty since the last guest had complained about smoke in the vents and left early. The room had been cleaned, aired out, sealed. Yet there it was, the unmistakable outline of someone standing at the window, perfectly still. I told myself it was just the curtain shifting in the draft. The wind could do that, especially near the coast. I didn't look again until I heard the faintest tapping, like fingers against glass. By the time I glanced up, the curtain had stopped moving. The next night, it happened again. Same hour, same window. This time the shadow didn't move away. When I looked, it lingered, shaped defined by the faint glow of the motel sign, tall and narrow, unmoving. My stomach twisted, but I made myself laugh it off. Paranoid much? I whispered, clicking the lighter open and closed. I even walked out with the master key and unlocked room 6. Half to prove there was nothing there. Half to feel brave. The air hit me hard, damp and sour, like old cigarettes and mildew. The curtains were drawn, but when I touched them, they were cold, wet, to the touch. I checked the closet, the bathroom, under the bed. Nothing. Still, the smell clung to me all night, and when I got home, it followed me. I scrubbed my hands, changed clothes, and swore I could still smell that stale smoke on my skin. I mentioned it to my manager, Rick, the next morning. He was one of those older guys who use humor like duct tape, good at covering cracks, but never really fixing anything. "You've been working too many doubles," he said, sipping his energy drink. "That place was sealed up weeks ago. Probably just the wind again. It's Florence. Everything smells like mold." I tried to press him, asked if maybe someone could have broken in. He shrugged. "Locked room, no damage, no footprints. Forget it." But I couldn't. That night, the phone on the counter rang at 2:17 a.m. An internal call from room 6. I froze. Every phone line in the building had an indicator light, and the one for room 6 was blinking red. My voice cracked when I answered. Blue Tide Motel, front desk. Nothing, just static, faint breathing, and a sound like the flick of a lighter. Then a man's voice, low and dry. "Don't lock the window." I slammed the receiver down so hard the bass cracked. My hands shook for 10 minutes before I could breathe normally. When I told Rick in the morning, he stared at me like I'd made it up. "The phone lines in those rooms are disconnected," he said flatly. "You sure you weren't half asleep?" I showed him the cracked receiver. He just... Candles along the aisle were lit, every single one, flickering softly, though no one had been there in days. The air was heavy with incense and smoke. I moved toward the altar and saw the same candle, burning at its center again. Flame steady, wax rising. My throat tightened. I reached out, whispering my wife's name before I could stop myself, and the flame bent toward me as if it were listening. Then it flared bright, blinding white, and I swear I heard her voice inside it. Just a single word. Stay. I stumbled back, knocking into a pew. My flashlight rolled under the seats, flickering against the floorboards. The flame pulsed like a heartbeat again, faster, brighter, until the wax rose into the air, forming thin threads that stretched toward me. I bolted for the exit, but the heavy doors resisted, holding like something was pressing them shut. When I finally forced them open, rain and cold air rushed in, and the lights behind me snuffed out all at once. I didn't stop running until I was home. The mark on my thumb burned the next morning. It had turned from a smudge to a pale scar, shaped almost like a flame, and the light of the emblem was still blackened. I keep it locked in my desk drawer now, but sometimes when the room is quiet, I can smell incense leaking from it. I tried telling Father Grant once more, but he said the church had been sealed for repairs since October. No candles, no services, nothing. He even laughed softly and said, "You probably dreamed that last part, Robert. Grief can make ghosts out of memory. But I know what I saw, I know what I heard, and I know that faith doesn't explain a candle that burns backward." It's been years since then, and I haven't stepped into another church since. I still pray sometimes, but never aloud, never near a flame. The scar on my thumb still itches on rainy nights, especially near All Saints' Eve. And when I pass by St. Catherine's, I sometimes see light flickering through the stained glass, just faint enough to doubt. If you ever find yourself alone in an old church at night, and the air smells faintly of incense and burning hair, don't look toward the altar. Don't try to see where the light is coming from. Just leave, because some prayers, once heard, are never answered. They only echo. Story number 3. I still keep my dad's old carving knife wrapped in a dish towel, the handle dark from years of pumpkin pulp and wet hands, the blade a little bent near the tip. He used it every October to carve faces that always looked more goofy than scary. The first Halloween after he died, I sat at the kitchen table staring at that knife for a long time before I finally used it. The smell of raw pumpkin filled the house, the same smell that used to cling to him after we spent hours making jack-o'-lanterns together. He'd light each one and set them along the porch rail, all flickering in uneven rhythm like they were breathing. That year, 2019, it was just me. Mom was working late, as she always did since he passed. I told myself carving pumpkins alone wasn't that different, but it was. The silence in the house was heavier than I'd expected, and every scrape of the knife against the rind sounded too loud. It was drizzling that night, the kind of cold, wet Oregon rain that seems to hang in the air. I had 3 pumpkins lined up on the counter. I carved faces into 2 of them, one smiling, one frowning, and left the third uncut for later. When I looked out the front window, the houses across the street were dark, except for one. The house at the corner of Maple and Pine had only a single pumpkin on its porch. It wasn't lit yet, but I noticed it because of how lonely it looked. One bright orange spot against all that gray rain. I didn't know the family well. I'd heard stories that their kid, a boy a few years younger than me, had died in a fire there when I was in middle school. The house had been repaired, repainted, but people in the neighborhood still crossed the street when they walked past it. After I finished carving, I set a tea light in each pumpkin and turned off the lights. Their faces flickered softly, shadows stretching up the walls. Then, through the rain-blurred window, I saw that the pumpkin across the street had come alive to a dull orange glow that hadn't been there before. I smiled a little, figuring someone else had decided to join in the Halloween spirit. But after a few minutes, I realized something strange. Its flicker matched the rhythm of my own candle. Every time My pumpkin's flame dimmed. The one across the street dimmed, too. When mine flared, so did its. I even tested it, leaning closer to blow lightly on my flame. Across the street, the glow wavered perfectly in sync. At first, I laughed. It had to be a coincidence. Or maybe just the way the wind moved. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. The next evening, when I came home from school, the pumpkin across the street was already lit, even though the rest of the house was dark. The drizzle hadn't stopped, and somehow the candle inside burned, clean, untouched by moisture. That night, I left my own pumpkins unlit, just to see what would happen. Sure enough, a few minutes after sunset, the one across the street flickered to life. Anyway, when I told my mom about it over breakfast, she barely looked up from her coffee. "It's Halloween, Noah," she said. "People decorate. Don't overthink it." I didn't push it, though. Her tone stung. She'd been different since Dad died. Tired, quieter, like part of her had drowned with him. That night, I stayed up late playing video games, tried to ignore the way the window seemed to pull at my attention. At midnight, I gave in and looked. The pumpkin was still burning, its flame, faintly blue now, blue like the oxygen flames Dad used in his garage torch when we worked on his car. And when I whispered, "Can you hear me?" the color shifted for just a second to a deep green. I thought about calling a friend, maybe Alex, who lived a few streets over, but it felt ridiculous to explain, so I went outside instead. The rain was lighter now, the street glistening under the amber streetlights. The air smelled like wet leaves and pea smoke. When I reached the edge of the neighbor's driveway, the pumpkin's light brightened. Its carved face was simple. 2 eyes, a straight mouth, but the inside glowed unevenly, like something alive was breathing within. I knelt and whispered again, "Who are you?" The flame flickered red. My pulse picked up. I took a shaky breath and said, "Are you the kid who used to live here?" For a moment, the light dimmed almost to nothing, then surged up again, brighter than before. The rain hissed when it hit the top of the pumpkin, but the candle didn't go out. I turned and ran back home. The next morning, there was ash on my porch, a faint dusting that streaked under my shoes. My pumpkins were dark, cold inside, their candles drowned. When I picked one up, a small scorch mark burned my fingertip, though the wax was hardened. At school, I tried telling Alex about it. He laughed and said, "Dude, it's probably just a motion light thing or reflection." But when he walked me home that afternoon, I pointed to the pumpkin across the street. "See, it's lit." Again, he squinted. "What pumpkin?" he said. I stared. It was right there, glowing orange against the gray. "The one on the porch," I said. He frowned. "There's nothing there, man. You sure you're okay?" That was the moment I realized I was alone in this. When night came, I tried not to look, but curiosity kept winning. And seeing a single spark in the distance, like the last coal of the fire, we swore to each other we wouldn't tell anyone, but I couldn't sleep that night. The smell stuck to my hair, to my clothes. When I threw my hoodie in the wash, the laundry room filled with a faint, unmistakable scent of smoke. The next morning, Mom wrinkled her nose and said, "Have you been lighting fires?" I said no. She made me wash my hands 3 times and still said she smelled it on me. A week passed. I kept catching that same smell on my jacket, my backpack, even my pillowcase. I started having dreams where I stood in the ruins, and the bell would ring just once before. Everything caught fire. I told Megan at school, but she looked confused. "What bell?" she asked. "You were the one who said you heard it." That's when I realized she didn't remember hearing it at all. Neither did Alex or Troy. They said they remembered going into the woods, but not why, not the bell, not the smoke, just me dragging them there. They laughed like it was nothing, but I saw the way Alex's hand shook when he dropped his pencil. On Friday, the bell Rang again, not from the woods this time. From outside my bedroom window. 3 low tones, muffled by distance, but clear as a heartbeat. I sat up so fast I hit my head on the headboard. The sound faded after the 3rd ring, leaving only the wind. I told myself it was the church down on Main Street, even though they hadn't used their bell in years. I went outside the next morning, and there were black smudges on the grass beneath my window, shaped like footprints, bare feet. I tried to show Mom, but by the time she came out, the dew had erased them. She said I was letting those ghost stories get to me and told me to stop sneaking out at night. Halloween came around again, before the fear faded. My mom made me hand out candy that year instead of trick-or-treating. I thought staying home would make me feel safe. Around 9, the doorbell rang 3 times, slow and deliberate. I opened the door, expecting kids in costumes, but there was no one there, just a wind and a faint trail of ash leading down the porch steps. I turned and every light in the house flickered. My ears started to ring, not like a sound, but a vibration inside my chest. The smell hit next, sharp and accurate, as if someone had just lit a pile of leaves on fire in the living room. Then I heard it, the bell, one single chime that came from the direction of Miller's Creek. I swear the window glass trembled when it hit. I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed my jacket and ran. My legs knew the path by memory. The fog was thick again, heavy with that same burnt sweetness. I could see faint orange flickers ahead, like candlelight, and I thought for a second that someone had rebuilt the chapel. But it was the same ruins, the same half-buried stones. Only now the air shimmered the way heat rises from. Asphalt shadows moved between the fog, and the firelight small and human-shaped children. Their voices came, in fragments, hymns sung backward, laughter that broke into sobs. The bell hung above the clearing now, suspended by nothing. It swung once, slow and graceful, and when it rang, the fog ignited not into flames, but into light, pure and blinding. I saw faces in pale, smoke-stray, their eyes blackened by soot. Among them, one looked at me directly. Tyler, my brother. He didn't speak. He just smiled the way he used to when he caught me doing something stupid, like sneaking out past curfew. Then his face began to fade into the light. I reached out, screaming his name, but the air was so hot it burned my palm. The bell rang again, a final deafening toll, and everything went dark. When I woke up, it was morning. My clothes smelled like smoke, my hair stiff with soot. I had a blister across my palm, shaped like a circle, the same shape as the base of the bell I'd seen. The others said they never saw me leave the house that night. My mom found me asleep on the porch steps, hands black with ash. She grounded me for a month. She never asked about the smell, but every Halloween after that around midnight, I still hear it. 3 low rings echoing from the direction of Miller's Creek. And every time that faint scent of burnt wood fills the car, even with the windows closed. I moved away years ago, but I can't drive through Mill City without feeling that pull in my chest. Last October, I passed the old turnoff near the creek and caught myself slowing down. The air outside was calm, no fog, no wind. Still, I rolled up the windows because I thought I smelled it again, smoke and wet leaves. Then I heard it. 1, 2, 3 soft holes. The same as before. I didn't stop this time. I kept driving until the sound faded behind me. But when I got home and hung my jacket, that smell was still there, strong as ever. And when I turned my wrist to take off the shoelace bracelet, it left a faint black mark around my skin as if it had been burned there. So, if you ever find yourself near Miller's Creek on Halloween night and think you hear a bell coming from the woods, don't follow it. Don't be brave. Don't be curious. Some sounds aren't meant for the living anymore. They're just the echoes of the ones who never stopped ringing for help. Story number 6. I always light the same vanilla candle on Halloween night. It's one of those thick, white ones that come in a glass jar with warm sugar comfort printed in gold cursive on the front. My son Milo used to love its smell when he was little. He'd say it made the house feel safe. I light it every year for him. He's 12 now, too old to hold my hand when we walk home from school, but I still light the candle all the same. It started the year his father left right before Halloween. Actually, Milo had worn his Spider-Man costume for 3 days straight, waiting for him to show up. He never did. I told him his dad probably got stuck at work. He didn't believe me. I could tell by the way he quietly took off the mask that night and put it back in the closet. It was pouring rain on. Halloween 2018. That bone-cold Oregon rain that soaks your jeans through before you even reach the mailbox. I had the porch light on and a big orange bowl full of mini Snickers and Kit Kats by the door. Milo had gone to his friend's house for the first time without me, and I told myself it was fine. I had Netflix, a blanket, and that candle. But I hate the silence that follows after. The last kid leaves. It's a silence that feels too aware, too still. I tried to distract myself by wiping the fog from the window, watching the rain collect in. The porch light. The first time the doorbell rang, I smiled. The kids were earlier than usual. I opened the door to find a group of them drenched raincoats, cheap plastic masks from Fred Meyer, candy bags clutched in their mittens. I handed out candy, wished them happy Halloween, and closed the door. But when I turned to blow out a bit of candle smoke drifting too close to the curtain, I noticed it muddy footprints across the porch, leaning away from the steps, then faintly back toward them again. At first, I figured it was the same group looping around the neighborhood, but something about the spacing was strange, like one pair of feet had moved slower, heavier. I told myself it was nothing. People always get paranoid when they're alone in the rain. I went back to my couch, pressed play on my movie, and ignored the flicker in my stomach that told me to check the lock again. The next ring came about 20 minutes later. This time, only one trick-or-treater stood on my porch shorter than Milo, wearing a cheap crack clown mask, blue and red streaks, the kind with rubber bands that snap if you pull too hard. The kid didn't say anything, just held out a hand, waiting. I dropped a few candies in his bag, feeling uneasy. Where's your group? I asked. No. Answer. Just a tilt of the head. Then he turned and walked off into the rain. I shut the door fast. The smell that lingered after I closed it, faint, but sharp with smoke. Not cigarette smoke, not with fire. More like something, burned and wet at the same time. I figured maybe someone was having a backyard bonfire despite the rain. When the doorbell rang again, I laughed nervously to myself. Kids were always testing me, seeing how many times they could double dip. I opened the door without thinking and froze. It was the same body, same height, same small gloved hands clutching a plastic bag. But the mask was different now. A rubber skeleton face this time with black eye, sockets that reflected my porch light. The kid didn't speak, just tilted his head again. My hand trembled as I dropped more candy into his bag. You already came by, huh? I tried to joke, my voice thinner than I wanted. He stepped back slowly, turned, and walked toward the street again. I noticed the same muddy footprints when I closed the door heavier now, as if more water had seeped into his shoes. I called my neighbor, Trish, who lived 2 houses down. She's the kind who always likes to keep tabs on the street, whose teenage son was throwing a party, who parked too close to the hydrant. I asked if she'd seen any kid in a skeleton mask walking around alone. She laughed and said she'd seen dozens of skeletons, witches, and clowns that night. I tried to explain the weird part, but she just told me to relax. Said I was probably spooked because I was by myself. Have a glass of wine, she said. He's probably just a kid trying to scare you. But something about that smell wouldn't leave my head. Every time I opened the door, the smoke scent came stronger. It even clung to my sweater. I tried to ignore it. I folded laundry, poured myself half a glass of red wine, and pretended I wasn't glancing at the window every few minutes. The third time he came, I heard the bell before I saw him. Just 2 quick rings. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped. Same size, same gloves, different mask, a white plastic face, expressionless. Raindrops slid down it, streaking the hollow eyes. His costume looked soaked through, the fabric clinging to his arms and legs. But this time, he held something in his hand, a small silver lighter. He didn't hold out his candy bag, just stood there watching me. I felt every hair rise on my arms. "Where's your mom?" I asked quietly. He tilted his head again, and the porch light flickered. That's when I smelled its strongest smoke, accurate and wet, curling through the rain. I shut the door hard, locked it, and backed away. My heart hammered, so loud I could barely hear the thunder. I grabbed my phone and called Trish again, but she didn't answer. I texted her, "That kid's back." Again. No reply. I thought about calling the police, but stopped myself. What would I even say? That a kid kept trick-or-treating too much? I turned off the porch light, hoping that would be the end of it. For a while, it was quiet, just a steady hiss of rain. I sat back down on the couch, clutching a blanket like armor. Then I heard it, a slow creak from the porch boards. My chest went cold. I turned off the TV, held my breath. A soft tapping started, at the window beside the couch. Not a knock, more like fingers brushing the glass. I couldn't move, my eyes fixed on the fog window. Through the condensation, a faint outline appeared. A handprint, small but not a child's. The fingers were too long. I scrambled for my phone and flicked on the porch light. Nothing. The window was empty, only rain streaking down. The next morning, I found the footprints again. Fresh mud tracked up the window, and there on the doormat, one of the masks, the white one, cracked down the middle. When I picked it up, the smell hit me. Again, burned fabric, smoke, and something else beneath it. Something sweet, almost metallic. I dropped and gagged. I called Trish later that morning. She sounded groggy. When I asked if she'd seen anything last night, she said, "No, but I dreamed about smoke. I think I left a candle burning." She laughed it off like she didn't remember the messages I'd sent. When I asked her if she'd checked her porch, she went quiet for a second, then said she didn't want to talk about it. For weeks, I couldn't shake it. My house smelled faintly of smoke even after I scrubbed the floors. I started double locking the door every night, pulling the curtains tight. Milo came home that weekend full of stories from his sleepover, and I didn't say a word to him about what happened. But when he unpacked his backpack, I noticed something strange. There at the bottom was a piece of folded paper. Inside, smeared with mud, was a single sentence: "Trick or treat." I threw it out and told myself it was nothing. But that night, while doing laundry, I found my sweater. The one-eyed, worn that night, still smelled like smoke. I washed it 3 times. The scent never left. Now, every Halloween, I don't hand out candy anymore. I keep the lights off. Milo's older, out with his friends, and I sit in the dark with that same candle burning low. I still see muddy footprints sometimes, just faint impressions in the rain near the porch. Last year, I thought I saw a small figure standing across the street, wearing a mask that looked like his father's old face, the same one from A. Photo I'd thrown away years ago. I don't open the door anymore, not for anyone. If you ever notice muddy footprints leading both away from your house and back again, don't wait to see who left them. Don't open the door, not even for the kids, especially not for the one who doesn't say trick or treat. Story number 7. Every Halloween I drive the same route home from work down Main Street, past the gas station, over the old steel bridge on Miller Creek Road. It's not that I like it, it's just the fastest way to get back to my place on the south side of Cottage Grove. I've been a male Carrier here for almost 10 years, long enough to memorize every cracked sidewalk and rusted mailbox. I don't believe in ghost stories, but I still touch the small brass keychain that hangs from my rear view mirror. Every time I cross that bridge, it used to belong to my younger brother, Mark. He was 17 when he disappeared. Halloween night, 2004. He'd been out with friends, and they said he was walking home when a driver saw him on the bridge waving a flashlight. By the time they stopped, he was gone. They searched the creek for days. All they ever found was his flashlight, waterlogged, wedged between the rocks. People still talk about it. The bridge boy, they call him now. Kids dare each other to drive across after midnight, claim they see someone standing in the road trying to hitch a ride. I used to laugh about it. I told myself I'd never be the kind of man to get caught up in that small-town myth-making. But every Halloween since, I've crossed that bridge anyway, telling myself it's just another drive, just another night. That October evening in 2017 was sharp and cold. Wind hissed through the trees, and the smell of wet leaves mixed with something metallic that always clings to the air around Miller Creek, like rust in water and old iron. My shift ended late, and by the time I left the post office, most of the town had gone dark. Pumpkins glowed faintly on porches, their candles nearly burned out. I remember glancing at my mirror and catching the faint glint of Mark's keychain, swinging as the truck rumbled over a pothole. I was thinking about him, about how he used to sit in the passenger seat while I drove my old Chevy, tapping his knuckles on the dashboard to whatever song was on. He'd been restless, always chasing something. I told him to stay home that Halloween. I still hear his voice sometimes. The way he laughed and said, "You worry too much." Half a mile before the bridge, I noticed something strange. A faint flicker of light far up ahead on the shoulder. I slowed down, squinting, through the drizzle on the windshield. It looked like a flashlight beam, unsteady and dim, moving just enough to catch my eye. I told myself it was probably a hunter or some kids messing around. But the closer I got, the more it wavered left, right, then vanished completely. When I rolled onto the bridge, the tires made that hollow metallic hum. I leaned forward, scanning the dark road ahead, the beams from my headlights slicing through the mist. Nothing, just a railing and the faint rush of the creek below. The metallic scent was stronger there, almost choking. I gripped the wheel tighter and exhaled. Just nerves, I muttered. I drove on, telling myself the flashlight had been a reflection, maybe off the water. 2 nights later, I was back on the same route after my evening shift. This time, I saw it again, the flicker of a light hovering near the far end of the bridge. Only this time, it didn't disappear. It flashed twice, steady, deliberate, like a signal. I slowed the truck and pulled up to the bridge's edge. The air felt colder, heavy with that same iron smell. I rolled down the window and called out, "Hey, you all right out there?" No answer. The wind rushed through the trees, carrying the faint sound of water slapping against the pilings below. I turned off my high. Beams waited. Nothing moved. When I drove off, I checked the mirror again, the keychain swinging gently, and for a split second, I thought I saw someone standing at the railing, arm raised like they were waving. The next morning, I told my supervisor, Sam, what I'd seen. He laughed, said I'd just spook myself. You spend too much time alone on those routes, he said. You start seeing what you expect to see. He told me about the legend again, about how every Halloween someone claims they've seen the ghost of the hitchhiker. I wanted to believe that was all it was. Still, when I clocked out that evening, I noticed my hands were trembling. The third time, I told myself I'd stop if I saw it again, just to prove it wasn't real. I was tired, running on black, coffee and stubbornness, the kind that builds up after years of pretending you're not haunted by something. The rain came down hard that night, streaking across the windshield in silver threads. When I turned onto Miller Creek Road. My wipers squeaked back and forth in that rhythmic, lonely sound. Halfway there, the flashlight appeared again, flickering, stuttering, then steady. I slowed, heart pounding. The figure was clearer this time. A man, standing on the shoulder in a soaked jacket. One hand raised, the other holding that weak beam of light. I eased the truck closer. Need a ride? I called out. The man didn't answer, didn't move, just kept the light fixed on me. Then I noticed something strange. The flashlight wasn't casting any reflection on the wet pavement. It was like the beam had no source. I leaned out the window. "Hey, you okay?" I shouted. The man lifted his head slightly, and even through the rain, I saw a pale, drenched face, eyes too, wide, and lips moving like he was whispering something I couldn't hear. Then he stepped backward toward the railing. I slammed the brakes. The tires screamed against the slick metal, jerking the truck sideways. The headlights swung across the bridge, and he was gone. I jumped out, heart hammering in my throat. Rain soaked through my jacket instantly. The bridge groaned under my boots as I stepped toward the railing. "Hello," I shouted over the wind. No answer, just the gurgle of the creek below. Then, faintly I saw it, something shining in, the water. I knelt and peered over flashlight. The beam weak, but still on. I called the sheriff that night. When they arrived, I told them everything. The man, the flashlight, how he'd stepped back and vanished. They combed the area for hours. No footprints, no signs of anyone on the bridge. Just my tire marks burned into the wet asphalt where I'd hit the brakes. When they pulled the flashlight from creek, it was dead, waterlogged, rusted. The sheriff, a guy named Keller, said quietly, "You know, this bridge has been causing trouble for years." He looked at me like he wanted to say something else, but didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. My clothes still smelled of the bridge, that metallic tang, like something rusted through. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I heard a faint sound from outside. I went to the window and froze. There, hanging from the rear view mirror of my truck, was Mark's keychain swaying. Slowly, though the air was still, I could have sworn I'd taken it inside earlier. When I opened the door, the night air hit me like a slap. The keychain wasn't moving anymore, just spinning slowly as if something had touched it. For weeks afterward, I kept dreaming about the bridge, the sound of water rushing below, the flashlight beam bobbing like a heartbeat. I started noticing the smell of iron everywhere in my clothes, my mail truck, even my skin. After washing my hands, I still drove my route, but I took the long way home. A month later, Keller called me. They reopened the file on my brother's case. Following a new lead, they found tire marks on the bridge that matched my trucks from that night. Only they were layered over older ones, almost the same pattern, like someone had slammed the brakes in the exact same place before. I quit the route the next spring, took a transfer to a smaller town north of Eugene. I still drive sometimes, though, especially late when the world's quiet. I keep that old keychain in the glove box now where I can't see it swinging, but sometimes I swear I hear a soft tap on the window when I cross a bridge, like someone's trying to get in. If you ever drive that way on Halloween over Miller Creek, past the steel rails and the cold wind that smells like iron, and you see a light flicker on the shoulder, don't stop. Don't even slow down, because sometimes what's waving you down isn't asking for help. Sometimes it's waiting to see if you'll make the same mistake twice. Story number 8. I keep a lighter in my glove box that doesn't work anymore. It's scratched, dented, and useless, but I can't bring myself to throw it out. It belonged to my brother Jake. He left it in my truck 2 days before the accident, right after we'd fought about who should have been driving that night. He wanted to take my shift, said I'd been pushing myself too hard. I told him I was fine. Hours later, his car hit the guardrail outside Reed Sport and the river took him. I was the one who identified his body. Ever since then, I can't stand the sound of rain on the windshield. It reminds me of that